So we are very eager to make sure that we are delivering value to you and have a good, rich technical agenda. So we welcome your feedback and we welcome your ideas about what you want to hear about from us at future meetings. And certainly you don't have to wait till our fall meeting to have any engagement with us. We are happy to talk to you anytime about anything related to HostBridge or how you're leveraging your IBM Z assets. So before we start our agenda and get into it, one of the things that I did do, this is certainly the marketing guy's responsibility, is we have goodies or HostBridge swag. So we are going to send these out to you after the meeting. If you registered for the meeting, then you will get this in the mail, and we will get that out hopefully in the next week or so. I got to be honest and tell you, I'm wearing the HostBridge socks right now today, and I love them. They are very comfortable. The zippered bag, our CFO, Bill Hinton, tells me that that will contain about $5,000 in hundreds. If you stack them all up, it fits perfectly in there. And then on the right, you might look at that and go, are you giving away a golf bag? That's actually not a golf bag. That's a water bottle holder and something to hold your phone as you are out hiking around the countryside. So we'll get that out in the mail just as our small token of appreciation for you being here with our meeting today. So to get right on with the agenda, I want to turn things over to James and his guest, our partner from HCL.
Thanks, Jerry. Wouldn't it be great if we could develop web APIs or web interfaces to our HostBridge services as quickly as we're able to develop the services themselves? You all are very familiar with how quickly we're able to develop the web service, or the APIs, the web services. Whenever I do services work, I'm always waiting on the web guys to put the web UI on the front of it, and it takes sometimes weeks to be able to accomplish that. We've been looking around for a partner that we could talk to about being able to build these web APIs much more quickly. And we came across Volt, and we were very impressed by their technology. Like all these things begin, we started with a meeting with our team and their team, our executives in marketing sales and their marketing sales executives on the phone. Luckily, me and Daryl were on the phone at the same time. And after all the suits talked for about 30 or 40 minutes, we finally got a word in edgewise and got them to shut up long enough. They were talking about projects and planning and proof of concepts. And me and Daryl had it up and connected about 15 minutes within the first meeting. And I didn't have to do much because we already had our standard set of web services that are available out there that anybody can connect to. And he was able to connect up and get access to our services in a JSON form very, very quickly. And he's going to show us a little bit about that and how it was done and how it's easy to develop these things very quickly for our customers. Daryl has been with HCL for about a year. He came with Volt when Coney was acquired by HCL. He's been working on the platform for a little over 10 years. Daryl, you want to tell us about how you're able to develop web APIs so quickly or web interfaces so quickly and show us a little bit about it?
Sure. Thanks, James. What we got done in that first 15 minutes was actually to incorporate the APIs into one of the two products as part of Volt MX, which is the Foundry level. And this is our integration level where we can actually go in and consume integration from basically any RESTful JSON, so whatever type of service you have. In this case, for HostBridge, we set up with the two standard transactions that they have for getting quotes and then updating the information back into their system. What we did, again, I'm inside the Foundry product here, and we set up the connection to the APIs that HostBridge James was exposing here. And with inside of these trader transactions here, there were basically two different things you could do. One was get the quotes and one was execute a transaction. Well, so to do that, once we set it up, we actually, with inside the product here, we've got the ability just to do a save and fetch and consume it, and you can actually see what the data looks like coming back here. And this is actually the output result. Well, I can also see the output result directly, and this is the filtered results. In this case, I didn't do any filtering. We're just pushing it through, but you can also follow the whole transaction through our logs here as well. So with that being said, when I got it, what did I do with it? Well, I took the data into our other tool, which is Iris, and created both a web interface for this as well as a mobile interface for this for a native, because from our platform you can generate both PWA, native, Android, iOS. And in this case, that demo here, and if I just refresh it, just let it reset itself here, and you can see I've got it running here where I've clicked. This is the data that was coming back, along with some charting data based on those last 7 days and your portfolio amount, which was calculated here. Now, within our platform, you also have the ability to run a preview app. So in this case, this is on your native device, and you can see my phone is connects here. Okay, I'm a rebel, guys, an Ole Miss guy. So from within inside the App Store, there is a platform called our Connect product and our preview product. And what this lets us to do is run the code during development. So, but I can do a full publish of this code and put it on the App Stores, anything I wanted to do. So as you can see here, I've got the same information on both. If I were to come in here and execute a trade here and say, okay, I want to buy one, so I'll execute the trade, and you'll see 43.30. That was running a little slow. Should have went to 43.31. There it goes. I can actually come over here, and in this case, I'm going to refresh my app over here, and you see the same information is crossing back and forth here. So this information is going back and forth.
Daryl, when you talk about native code, are you saying that you're generating an actual iOS app that can be installed out of the App Store?
Correct. So in this case, if we bring up the visualizer, which excuse me, the Iris, guys, I apologize. We are renaming these codes as we speak and branding it for HCL. And in this case, here, you're looking at exactly what you're seeing on the screen from the website of the house. This is a responsive application, and I come in here, you can see all the different breakpoints. Now, I didn't actually show you that on the screen here, but this is truly responsive. As we move around, you can see the data is moving, it's changing its shape based on the format here on the screen. You can do all of this inside the platform relatively easily, as well as from a mobile footprint. Let's see here, I've got a console designed for mobile, and you can see the look and feel here as well.
Daryl, how long did it take you to build these apps?
Off and on. I worked on this for about 2 days before we had it built, again, between other priorities and things. So not a lot of time, because we have a lot of these components and such here on our marketplace, and they were to drag and drop them onto the screen. One of the things here is we can consume these and combine them with any other products or any other platforms you have. So if you need to get data from your mainframes and combine it with, they say, data from Salesforce or any other system, you can easily do that inside the application. This is sort of our architecture here, and it's our any to any, because from our perspective, it's consume any API from from the cloud, CRM, your web services, from HostBridge, as you can see, but you can put down here at the bottom, IoT databases, and exposing it out to the wearables, the desktops, the mobile devices. We do this under one code base. So you've got the two products we talked about, Iris and Foundry. Foundry being your middle tier, and Iris being your UI UX design tool. And above that sits our Volt Player, which is what translate that one code base into all of this functionality. And under the covers, you write JavaScript. So it's one. It's a low code actions. You drag the actions over, but under the covers, under the actions and everything, it's just JavaScript. Guys, that's pretty much it. We'd be glad to give anybody any more information on this product if you'd like, and we'll be around for questions at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, and actually, we're happy to take questions right now. So anyone who wants to know more, needs clarification, or has a comment, you can just submit that to us. We'll open up the mics when we get to the end of our session, but we'll look right now at chat to see if you know anything or want to know more about what you just saw. So don't hesitate to let us know what your thoughts are through the chat panel. So thank you, Daryl and James, for taking us through that. And we will move on into the next part of our presentation for you today, and that is to introduce Russ Tubner, who wants to talk to you about what we're doing with integration analytics these days.
Great, thanks, Jerry. I'll go ahead and take over and share my screen. Well, as many of you know, we have been on quite a journey. Jerry, first of all, can you confirm that my screen is showing? Hope it is.
Yes, we are seeing it.
Great. Well, again, just to restate, over the last few years, we've been on quite a journey with many of you, working on a new set of capabilities, really a whole new product line at HostBridge that we refer to as integration analytics. I'm going to give you a brief update on that and show you what's new. We're kind of euphemistically calling it 2.0 because there enough things have been going on under the covers that we really want to give you an update to everything that we're doing. So let's keep on going. Now, the theme of kind of this last turn of the crank, this last set of updates, is really represented by these two words, deeper and wider. And I'll explain exactly what that means. But again, just to level set, what HTAC is essentially a flashlight. It is a tool to allow you to see how all of this activity coming at kicks at your mainframe, what it's doing, what are its performance metrics. And frankly, we've had our customers, some of which on this are on the call, use HTAC to solve a number of different problems. We've used it to spot the need to apply various bits of IBM maintenance. We've used it to find very nefarious RPA platforms. We've used it to solve many, many problems already in its short life. But again, just to reinforce, the HTAC software that runs on the mainframe and under Kix, its number one job is to grab little bits of information about that request. We refer to it as the metadata regarding the request. And we cause that data to be saved as part of the SMF 110 record in a very normal, fashion like any other bit of data added to the SMF data. It goes in as the origin data field. Then that data gets transported down to Splunk. We use Splunk because most of our customers have it. And then from there, it keeps wanting to advance there. Then from there, we do all sorts of analysis. But again, the key thing here is enriching and analysis. Lots of different ways to transport the data down. Now, while the product can be used to solve many problems, we have used it quite successfully at many different customers looking at this use case where people have used, or organizations have used various devices out here on the left side of the diagram to use terminal emulation and screen scraping to achieve some sort of automated business process. Now, everyone on this call is a HostBridge customer. You have probably HB.js, and so you are well acquainted with why all of this is inherently a bad idea and why doing that automation on the mainframe is far more cost effective and far more performant. But there are a lot of organizations on planet Earth for whom this style of detailed, highly intensive interaction between something outside the mainframe and CICS, that is what they do 7 by 24. And what HTAC is helping them see is why that is suboptimal, inefficient, and costing them far too much. Now, one of the things that we've done over the last few months is we worked with a particular customer where all of their transactions occurred under a single transaction name. Now, from my last presentation, you know that one of the things that we do as we observe these patterns of robotic processes, we create what we call a DNA, kind of right over here. Well, you'll notice that if all the transactions are named the same, in this case, DIMS, and all we know is the AID key, well, it tells everyone more than we knew, but it's not exactly a big revelation. And so after seeing a couple of customers who had transactions styled in this way, we decided to go ahead and add support in version 1.16 for some other elements of information. Particularly wanted to add information about the BMS maps that are being used for both input and output. And we also, we had a customer who said they really needed to know the program name performing the BMS map operation. So that would tell them more about the pathway. So as a result, the DNA that we're now displaying within the tool is much more replete with information. Now, don't worry if that looks a little cryptic. I'm going to explain exactly what that means. So if you were to look at that right now, what we know about each one of these interactions is a lot. For example, we know that in that highlighted line right there, we know that the DIMS transaction was run, the enter key was pressed, the resulting, the output map that was sent was something called term MA3 and a map set term MSM, and that that send map operation was performed by a program term DI, and that *2 means that it happened twice in a row as part of this robotic sequence. Now, the fun thing is, once we begin to show customers this enhanced DNA, it really makes it easier to spot inefficiencies. And it lets us kind of play some what-if games. So one of the things that the customer said, hey, that DNA looks pretty suspicious, particularly all those clear keys. And so we said, okay, well, let's break apart all those clear keys and look at this DNA just a little differently. And when they looked at this, that's, as we call it, the jaw hits the table moment, where they go, uh-oh, I see a problem. And here was the problem. This sequence of interactions is being driven at kicks, or 2 kicks, virtually 7x24, just like a drum beat. Now, it's coming from a typical web UI or RPA platform, such as HATS, UiPath, or LegaSuite. And clearly, it's obviously using emulation and screen scraping to achieve integration. Now, all of us on this call would understand for obvious reasons why that's a bad idea. But there's a lot of this that's still going on in the world, a whole lot. Now, on that particular platform, that sequence of operations is really controlled by 5 small macros. And so they've tried to write these macros in a very structured way, and kind of with a mentality of having a main program and some subroutines. So a main macro invokes the smaller macros. But here's the catch. The macros are written to be good citizens and defend against bad citizens. And so what do? The first operation each macro performs is a clear key to ensure that they know on what screen the process will start it. So they're trying to defend against another macro leaving the session in an odd state. Well, they also want to be good citizens. So what do? Well, the last operation they do is clear the screen to leave the kicks app at a known state. Now, the catch is they do this even if the macro only runs a single transaction. So what is the net result? Well, the net result is down here, and that is that through this analysis, we were able to clearly show that there are more unproductive interactions with kicks than productive interactions. Let me state that again more concretely. Their overall transaction load, the number of transactions they run within any given period of time, is 50%, 50% higher than it needs to be. And that's because a very well-intentioned, someone with very good intentions, but using terminal emulation and screen scraping to achieve integration, wrote a set of macros, never understanding the cost on the back end of all of those needless interactions with kicks. Now, that's what we mean by we've enhanced the product to go deeper. We're also enhancing the product to go wider. And by wider, we mean go beyond just really detailed analysis of 3270 sort of connections. We now want to focus on HTTP connections, MQ, CTG. And the diagram changes, but it's still very similar. And that is, there are a lot of use cases in the world where some sort of a program out here uses something like CTG to send in a request. But in order to accomplish the business purpose, they don't just send in one request, they send in dozens of requests back and forth. Now, of course, what this does is every time a request comes in, a new mirror transaction is started in order to run that program. And the fact of the matter is that sometimes, starting a transaction is fast, or we view it as fast, but it's really work under the covers. And there are times where the overhead of starting the transaction is actually greater than the time spent actually doing the work. So we are enhancing HTAC to be able to analyze and look at this flow right here so that we can add that to the data we send down to Splunk, and so that we can analyze it for efficiency. In some cases, we can envision using HB.js as a much more efficient way to achieve that degree of integration. Again, the theme is very similar. When you do automation outside the mainframe, it doesn't matter if it's coming in via 3270 or something like CTG, there is a chance of spending a lot more energy under the covers of kicks than is necessary to achieve the business purpose. The HTTP diagram looks very similar. There are many organizations. We were looking at a top 10 bank, data from a top 10 bank this past week. They have a non-mainframe platform, a big Java app server running outside the mainframe. And what it is doing is sending in lots of HTTP requests to run individual COM area programs. Well, that was probably a good idea maybe 10 or 20 years ago, but as they've scaled, what happens is that they now have millions of these requests flowing in. Now, here's the catch. This platform out here is, again, doing orchestration. So instead of sending just one request in, they have to send in dozens of requests, each one running under its own mirror transaction, and each one requiring data conversion from XML to a COM area or to a copybook structure, and then back from the copybook structure back to XML. So we are enhancing HTAC to also be able to grab some metadata about these activities so that we can send that data down to Splunk, assess the cost, and help organizations understand those cases where they would be in the money to do the orchestration on the mainframe via HB.js. Speaking of remediation options, it's been kind of fun to continue this journey with our customers. What integration analytics has shown and revealed to customers are a lot of things. So, for example, the need to do perhaps some tuning. It's also highlighted for some of our customers the need to refactor some of their applications and do a bit of modernization. Of course, we're also always pleased whenever integration analytics highlights the need to use HB.js to up their integration game. But sometimes what integration analytics shows is just simply a need to change the business process or to communicate more precisely within the organization. I think I may have told this story last time, but one of our HTAC customers through integration analytics saw a particular pattern of interactions that was happening many times every day. And so we actually theorized that they could solve this problem using HB.js. And our customer kind of chuckled and said, no, I can solve that problem in one phone call. Because clearly that end user doesn't know that we retired that RPA bot about a year ago. And all they have to do is when they come in the morning, get a particular PDF off of our internal internet server. So sometimes it's just about adjusting the business processes or communicating better, but it all starts with enhanced visibility so that you on the IT side, on the mainframe side, can see what's really happening. Jerry, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Russ. And I'll just have you advance to the next slide since you're doing such a great job driving. And what I want to do is simply introduce our Chief Technology Officer, Scott Glenn. Many of you know Scott because he has something he's going to tell us about that's new.
Thank you, Jerry. We're going to talk about IDEs here for a minute. So if you go ahead and flip to the next one. So within our existing customers, we have two entities that talk to HB.js. Excuse me a sec. Talk to HB.js and, do things like get scripts and make scripts. So the first one, humans, second one are machines. Machines we're not really going to talk about today because every customer has, different tooling and different pipelines. So what we're going to talk about is the human side of it. And I think that covers most of the people on the call today. So just a little brief history lesson. With HostBridge, we had initially a thick client IDE that we developed. And like many other companies, they quickly realized that almost everybody was writing lots and lots of code to build IDEs and UIs. And we were all basically reinventing the wheel. So IBM and a bunch of other companies donated a lot of their source code and came up with the Eclipse project. And Eclipse is really a platform for building IDEs, especially. It's really good for development environments. So, most of you have used our Eclipse plugin to interact with HB.js. So, but we've recently heard some people asking about VS Code, which is another IDE put out by Microsoft. Kind of, the same kind of lifespan or lifestyle, origination story. That's the right word. So Visual Studio had IDE code in it as well. And Microsoft finally said, look, people could use this. And so they've opened that up. So the primary difference between those two, Eclipse is a very heavy platform, and it's really rich for an entire environment. And so this is an example of Eclipse. And if you've used our existing plugin, this is what it looks like. It's got a source code window there on the left. And then on the right, you see all the scripts and services with HostBridge. So one of our customers, Bancor South, which I notice a few names I recognize, Kenneth and Clayton, they got industrious and they actually wrote their own extension to VS Code to interact with HostBridge. And they were kind enough to post that source code out there for us. So that was a starting point for us to add VS Code support. I also want to have a shout out. Lehman is also on the call, and he's been responsible for our Eclipse plugin and then also taking this code and expanding it to make sure that we have the same feature set on both plugins. So now VS Code, one of the reasons people really like VS Code is that if you're a developer, VS Code is more of a source code editor with a little bit of extra stuff, where Eclipse is a very big platform with lots of tools. So if you spend most of your time in a source code editor, you tend to really like VS Code because it's really a great source code editor. So looks a little different because the source code is now on the right, the files are on the left, or by files, I really mean the services and the scripts that are within HB.js. But other than that, it's really, the workflow is very similar. And so no surprises there. So next slide, please, Jerry. Okay, so, and Microsoft is now claiming that VS Code is actually the most popular IDE in the world. So it's no surprise that our customers are, talking to us about it. We tend to try not to take any kind of technology battles. So if, customers are moving to VS Code, we're happy to move there as well. Both IDEs end up using services inside of HB.js via HTTP, just like similar to the services you make with HB.js itself. So we're still going to continue to support the Eclipse IDE, update it for Eclipse releases, all of that, because almost all of our customers currently use it. So no concern there. It's more just whichever one you like. And I'm sure we'll have customers that use both, and we're absolutely fine with that. So if you are interested in the VS Code plugin, or VS Code terminology is technically an extension. So please let us know, and we'd be glad to get that to you. It's very close. We have a few features left that we're trying to knock out so that it's on par with the Eclipse one. And if you're interested in that, let us know, and we'll get you on the list and get it to you as soon as it's ready.
Okay, and Scott, thanks. And we have a comment from Dan, and he says they're using VS Code already for most of their HostBridge JavaScript development, and they are offering to help us with the beta test. So Dan, thanks for that. It's good to know.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll have James or Scott reach out to you about that. So next thing we're going to talk about is the zIIP engine and running your scripts there. And we get reminded every once in a while from having dialogues with our customers that we forget about some of the features of HostBridge that provide a lot of benefits. So James is going to talk to us real briefly about this.
Everybody will notice that they're being unmuted, and you'll be allowed to talk. And this little section could be real short because I may not get any audience participation. We'll have to wait and see. So everybody knows what the zIIP is on their environment, and we've got a lot of customers that use the zIIP. But I've had quite a few questions from customers about how much does it really save? How effective is it to have a zIIP installed in your environment? Now, 99% of our code runs on the zIIP, but that doesn't mean everything runs on the zIIP. If we're executing any CI/CS APIs, or if your code is executing, then we're running on the GP. So it's not 100% running on the zIIP. So I'm going to ask for the audience and see if anybody wants to share with us their experience on running with zIIP. And some customers use zIIP quite heavily, and they might have some good data that they share with us. Would anybody like to talk up and tell us about their zIIP experience? Don't leave me hanging, guys. Somebody's got to help me out here.
It's regarding the zip drive, or zip processor, rather?
Zip processor, absolutely.
It's been working pretty well at Blue Cross Blue Shield. We only notice when it stops working.
I'll expand on that. We did run into a few bumps where we just weren't used to the scaling model of zIIP as compared to what we were more used to with GPU. But we have seen the offload do well, and for the integration code that is HB.js, that holds true, and it's definitely a lot cheaper. But it's a drop in the bucket compared to the business transactions on the back end that it's enabling. So, it's not like we're seeing huge reportable savings, because the majority of it is,
it's running
still
your
happening
code
back there, right? On our code, not your code.
Does anybody have any numbers they could share with us about how much it might be saving them? No? Okay. Well, hey guys, I appreciate you guys jumping on. Listen, if you're not sure if it would save you any money, save you any CPU, try it. It doesn't take much to turn it on. We can enable it, let you see how it works in your environment. And if it saves you money, then you can decide whether it's the right purchase for you or not. Jerry, back to you. By the way, everybody's mics are going to still be open for the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, so we'd like to hear from you about this or anything else we've chatted with you about. So if you're interested in zIIP support for your HostBridge license, just let us know. As James said, it's pretty easy for us to turn that on and let you see what you're going to get out of it. So what I want to introduce now is Tom Niedermeyer. Tom is retired from BMC, but he's not retired from the enterprise software business. And so when Tom took his exit from BMC, we grabbed him and put him to work here at HostBridge. And one of the things Tom is very good at is understanding business models around enterprise software. So we put him to work at HostBridge developing a model. And so I'm going to introduce Tom and let him take you through what he's created.
Well, thank you, Jerry. And thank you, Russ, for having me. Yeah, as Jared mentioned, I was with BMC for many, many years in the sales and marketing standpoint, and also was fortunate to run a business unit for several years. So this is going to be the least technical part of the presentation today, I promise you. But what I've talked to Jerry and Russ and the team about is really this concept of financial justification. And I always like to start these conversations with kind of like have you ever heard this before? So let me tell you a story. So and tell me if this sounds familiar. So budgets are not increasing; they're shrinking typically. My sense is that expenses are probably being scrutinized more than ever, and you're probably being asked to do more with less in some way, shape, or form. And at the same time, you really can't do your job without technologies like HostBridge, because it lets you automate, it lets you integrate, it lets you drive efficiency into that old mainframe environment. And I've seen, and I know that there's real value in HostBridge, but I just can't, it's hard for me to quantify the business value when purchasing people and vendor management or even technical leadership ask me about these tools. Hopefully that's not a foreign concept to anybody on this audience right now. And hopefully that sounds familiar. And really, frankly, whether it's HostBridge or any other technology out there, that same story is very, very evident in day-to-day business today. So today, and with the help of HostBridge and the team that we're working with, we'd like to introduce to you guys a view of a financial justification. And it's a program, it's not fancy, but it's a program that we created to help users address these questions and quantify the value of HostBridge solutions. As you'll see on the right, there are 5 sections which we've identified, which we believe are measurable business value within the HostBridge implementations. We've loaded default variables and costs that are derived from industry averages and independent research. We recognize that actual mileage may vary by client, so each section allows each of you to edit and change any of the variables to make each of these situations more relevant. So there's 5 foundational elements that we've outlined, and each of these elements has a section and literally a math equation that would help you derive the business value of each. And we've actually talked about a lot of these things on today's call. Russ talked about HTAC and the power of visibility. And so the first section is talking about proactive transaction analytics and reducing the number and the severity of incidents with greater visibility and proactive management. So literally, we believe that identifying these incidents and even the extreme of these things could be literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings. And again, actual mileage may vary. The second area is reduction in development time. So faster time to market, greater automation, greater orchestration are clearly areas of savings. So we've added variables on a cost of developer and typical HostBridge savings when you implement HB.js. The third area is lower resource consumption. So with purposeful and orchestration and integration, clients will see lower response and CPU time, which will ultimately reduce hardware and software costs. So we've added industry metrics on cost per MIPS and the HostBridge savings that goes along with that. And then the second area is what James had talked about, is the cost savings with zIIP exploitation. So, you know, as James had mentioned, there has been considerable effort made in fully enabling zIIP exploitation with the HostBridge solutions, which ultimately leads to lower costs. And there's an exercise for just that in this spreadsheet. And then finally, just lower software costs. And that could come in a variety of different savings, different areas, one of which is direct, right? So it's just lowering your CPU costs and not using as much software costs that goes along with that. Or maybe it's replacing screen scraping technologies, or indirectly saving MIPS so that you don't have to upgrade your CPU or upgrade your software along the way. So really the purpose of the discussion today is really just to make you aware that the program is available. We don't have time today to walk you through all the elements of this, but we'd be happy to walk through the details of each of these sections and our assumptions that go along with that on another call, if that's appropriate. We're also actually interested in hearing your feedback. And we've given a lot of assumptions that go along with that. So if you feel like there's better ways of quantifying the value of HostBridge, then we'd like to hear that. So that's the pitch on this thing. It really is, the intent is not to capture your data and use it for public use. The intent is for you to use this information for the benefit of your organization. And then along the way, maybe you provide us with information and details about how we might justify this for other customers go along the way. So really, the three questions I have for you guys are: one, is this valuable? Two, are there other people in your organization that like to see this? And three, would you or anyone in the organization want to take a look at it in further detail? So I'll throw that out as a general question to the field.
Yeah, we'd be really interested in knowing if anyone would like to take a crack at using this tool. Typically, you know, as I was talking with Tom before our session, we don't, you know, have a lot of people telling us that it's very difficult to justify HostBridge when they've done a prototype using our software. But still, we realize that, you know, budget realities exist for everybody. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible for you all, if this is going to be a challenge potentially, with a tool and some insight to make that a seamless, streamlined process for you. So anybody have any thoughts, comments, or questions about that? Anybody want to try this?
Does anybody have another variable outside these 5 categories that they have used to go through their annual internal justification of HostBridge related costs? We'd love to hear that as well.
Comment by Dan saying he wished he'd had this back when he was trying to justify HostBridge the first time.
Well, we're certainly going to deploy it in that fashion, Dan, for sure. But we want to make sure our current customers know about this. So,
yeah. Well, any thoughts along the way that you may have about this, or when you're going through, if you go through an annual process in your organization regarding the financial justification for HostBridge, please let us know. We are developing tools to make sure that that's easier.
Okay, well, please keep in mind we want to have more dialogue with you before our session's over. And so if there's something that's on your mind related to HostBridge or CICS or integration analytics, let's chat about it before our session ends. I'm going to bring Scott back in because one thing we always want to do is we want to talk about what's coming up. But before we do that, Scott, I see we have a question that just came in. It's about implementing transaction analytics. And Russ, I want you to take a look at that and talk about that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the question is,
let me state what the question is. If someone who wants to use our transaction analytics, integration analytics, what's the impact on CPU consumption of doing that? I believe that is the question, but if I got it wrong, please let us know.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair question. The code that we install running in the CICS region takes the form of either a GLUE, which stands for Global User Exit, or a TRUE, a task-related user exit. It's a very short segment of assembly language code. It runs, and all it does at various points is gather little bits of information and then cause it to be stored in a particular CICS data area, which in the natural course of CICS cutting the SMF 110 record, the data that we put in those fields will be included. So all we are doing is simply grabbing a little bits and pieces of metadata and then adding that to a pre-existing fields in what's called the CICS monitor data area. As a result, it's really very fast, very, very fast. We had a recent experience with a customer that had a very small mainframe, and by small I mean under 200 MSUs. And during the heat of the day, when their load is high, they are running at 100% capacity. They were obviously very concerned. Will turning on integration analytics, will it slow things down? And again, I told that customer exactly what I just said. We've had absolutely no reports of any undue resource consumption. As a result, they turned it on. They saw no adverse impact. They were able to gather the data in their production environment, and we were able to do the analytics. They also decided to, because they could and they had the software, they just decided to leave it on. So, which is fine, because what it means is all the SMF 110 records will have that enriched data for all of their transactions from this point forward.
And we're really talking about just a few hundred and similar instructions, right, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, we're really just talking about, I mean, if we, and I mean, those of you who know us, I mean, we're kind of really geeks at heart. So I can say authoritatively, because I wrote this particular code, if one of our exits gets control and there's nothing to do, we will pass back control to CICS in 10 assembly language instructions. If in fact we need to do something, then we will run perhaps 100 or 200. So the again, it's extremely low overhead to be able to gather these data elements. Now, I'll put a caveat there. There are certain things that are more expensive to do than others, relatively speaking. So, for example, if we need to look at the payload that came in with an HTTP request, and I need to dig through a little bit of XML data to find just the right metadata that would be of value to you. Well, I'm going to burn a few more instructions to do that, but by no means is it onerous. It's not heavy. So I think the question is fair. It's a great question. And what I can say is across the customers who've used it, we've had no reports of the HTAC analytics component having any undue overhead.
Well, and Russ, let me add that I think we have maybe one or two customers in our meeting today who have been through this process with us. I don't know if any of them are willing to share Russ speaks the truth or Russ is not speaking the truth. But if anyone on the call wants to share about the experience you had with integration analytics, we would love to have you do that. What we'll do now, though, is go back to Scott, who's been standing by, so he can talk to us about what's coming up with future releases.
Okay. All right. So as many of you know, our current release is 6.9.1. So we've been working a lot this week and last week on rolling out our next releases, which will be 6.9.3 and 7.0.5. So the 6.9.3 is a maintenance roll-up of everything that has been fixed, addressed, enhanced since 6.9.1. So it's a pretty lengthy list, actually, for only 0.02 numbers. And then 7.0.5, as mentioned last time, version 7 was a release around internationalization, particularly for Arabic support. So we've had that running at two customers' sites. That was the 7.0.0. So 7.0.5 is the roll-up of everything we had to address to make sure that all of the Arabic support worked. Another thing that happened with 7, and so functionally, there's not a big difference between 7 and 6 other than the additional tools for Arabic and some internationalization. But one thing, version 7 does have some RDO changes, so it's not plug compatible with 6.9.1. 6.9.3 is plug compatible, so if you had to, you could just drop the modules in, overwrite them, and it would work. Not that our customers typically install that way, but with 7, the other thing that happened was there are some RDO changes, and then also we moved up the base machine level to a Z12, which let us take advantage of some additional instructions. And on CPU bound benchmarks, we're seeing 20 to 30% improvement. Not that our customers are running, high performance calculations typically in HB.js. We're doing integration work, but every bit helps. As Russ said, we like to obsess about the little numbers because eventually they add up to big numbers. So that's where we're at on that. Those should be out this week or next. Also, just to reiterate, if you're current on maintenance, you have access to any of our supported releases. And many customers, it's not an all or nothing thing. Many customers often will phase them in. They'll have one region running, 6.9.1. They'll put in a new one as 6.9.3 to test it. So, it's not an all or nothing thing. Many of our customers will have multiple releases at a given time. And then, of course, from the last one on the horizon is V8 that we're continuing to work towards. And that one's going to have some major performance improvements, and will bring our JavaScript engine up to current standards, which I know many of you have requested.
Okay, and yeah, thanks for the comment. Yes, indeed, those microseconds add up over millions and millions of transactions and have a real impact for sure. So we are at the end of our material, but we're at the beginning of our discussion and Q&A. And so I just saw that we did get something from Jamie. Thanks. The team is reading that right now. And as James said earlier, our mics are open. Yours are. The lines are open. Tell us, what do you want to hear about? What questions do you have? What would you like to share? We want to know what's on your mind. And Scott, we have a question about version 8.
Yes, version 8 will be the one that brings it up to the current ECMA standard, where, as you know, the one we have is a few revisions behind. Yes, I know you guys are one of the, Dan you guys have been one of the big pushers on that. So we're definitely, you're always top of the list when I think of that.
So something that I want to go back to just in the way of giving kudos to Scott. He mentioned Arabic support. We have added Arabic support to HostBridge, and we don't talk about our customers unless they give us permission to do that. But yes, we have a new customer in the Middle East. That support was added for them. It is in, it is working. And so we are looking actually to expand our presence in that part of the world as well. So it's great to have that growth opportunity. But that's all Scott's hard work, and we're grateful.
No, I do not speak Arabic, so don't try it on me.
So let me ask Russ or any of the other folks on the HostBridge team if they had questions they wanted to get out to you all while we've got you captive.
Yeah, before everyone goes, I certainly don't want to waste the opportunity, because it's just a privilege to have customers online with us. What I'm most and always interested in are, what topics do you want to hear about next time? I know Jerry has said that, but if you don't have to speak up, but just go to the chat box and just pepper us with topics. Tell us what you want to know, whether it's related to HTAC, whether it's related to HB.js, whether it's whatever. I mean, it turns out in an average day, we talk to a lot of you about a lot of topics, some of which that are directly related to our products, some of which frankly are not, but we're always willing to help our customers. So please tell us what value we can bring to you, and just throw it in the chat box or send us an email. The other thing I would say is, back on the question regarding HTAC and the analytics, the easiest way to get started with this is just let us know that you'd like to install it on a trial basis. We'll send you the software. You can activate it in a test region, run it for a little bit, and then just send us some SMF 110 data, and we'll be able to look at that, and then we'll schedule a follow-up phone call with you and show you what we were able to learn. Just saw a question there. Is transaction analytics free? No, it is not. We like to say it's nearly free relative to the value it provides, but no, it's not free. But for any HostBridge customer, we are more than happy to provide it to you, and under a trial license agreement. And even in a trial scenario, if you run this for 30 days or for a week or a day or whatever, and send us your SMF data, and we run it through our dashboards, I promise you, we will learn something. I mean, it just never fails. We sometimes, every time we get a new batch of data from a customer and we look at it through our analytics platform, we always kind of shake our heads around the office, because we see all sorts of things. For example, we found one customer who forgot that someone had set a particular setting in their CICS sit table about a decade ago, forgot about it, and as a result, they were generating about twice the number of SMF 110 records that they needed to. So it's hard for me to predict what we will see, but I am confident that even just a trial use of the product will add value. Dan, I see your comment there about more Splunk dashboards for HTAC. Yeah, we're on it. Also, we're adding the support. We're actively right now working through the specific support that you've requested.
And also, James asked about how long HTAC 1.16 has been out.
1.16 is pretty new. It has been out. I mean, it's been out in the last 30 days. The prior to that, it was 1.14. HTAC development is going at a pretty fast clip right now, because everyone who's using it, it never fails that they'll say, it's like the customer I highlighted today. They said, well, since all of our transactions are named the same, seeing just the transaction name in the DNA doesn't help us that much. And so we said, okay, so we enhance the mainframe code to be able to grab the BMS map information and other little tidbits of metadata, add that into the SMF data record, and then move that down to the analytics platform. So we are constantly doing that. I mean, we have just a list of things that are going in week by week.
And then, of course, Kenneth, I see your comment too. Yes, we will absolutely commit to being proactive about changes involved in migrating to version 8. We want to make sure we make that a smooth process for all of our customers. So I don't know if there's anything the team has to say now, but we will make sure we communicate proactively about that.
Upgrading to 6.9.3 and even upgrading to 7 is going to be relatively painless. Upgrading to 8, that's really going to be, you said the word migration, Jerry, and that's actually the right word. It's going to be a little bit heavier lift when we go there, but there's going to be a significant amount of payoff in going to 8, both in performance and in usability. One other thing I wanted to mention, Scott obviously said he was looking for VS Code beta testers for the VS Code extension for HostBridge, and I'm looking for beta testers for the Application Explorer, the web-based Application Explorer. We're now ready to go to beta with that, and we'd like to have people get involved with that as well and give us some feedback on whether it does what they needed to do. And the Application Explorer is another component inside the Eclipse plugin. The Application Explorer allows us to explore a transaction before we write services for it.
Yeah, please let us know if you're interested in doing that. We're going to move to the next slide, and we're monitoring still. Chat. Thanks, Dan. James will take note of that. Russ, if you move us to the next slide.
Yeah, I just thought someone was asking for, next time we will show some more dashboards, but I thought I would just show this one for fun. We talk a lot about macros and RPA activity. This is a screenshot of actual live data at an HTAC customer, where we were able to detect the presence of a gargantuan macro. We internally referred to this as JAWS, but this is one of those situations where HTAC has more than paid for itself, because we were able to detect the presence of a server. And in fact, they have 4 servers on the West Coast running this exact process. It lasts for 5 hours of time duration. So times 4, 20 hours. Each one of these servers pound in about 250,000 transactions. And because of a sit table setting, they generate twice as many SMF records. So this is every night at this customer, they are generating 2.4 million SMF records, documenting the execution of about 1 million CICS transactions being pounded in through an RPA platform in what is arguably the least efficient possible way anyone could conceive of handling the work. That's what HTAC is meant to see and resolve. So Jerry, here we go.
Yeah, we have a resource. I think many of you are familiar with some of the ebooks we put out. This is one of our most recent ones. Mike Benson, some of you may know of Mike from the writing he's done at Enterprise Systems Journal, but a lot of the things that Russ shared today about integration analytics are the basis for what we've written about. So if this is of interest to you, there's a link on the screen. I don't think that's a live link, but if you go to the HostBridge website and then just go to guide-to-mainframe-optimization, you'll get to the landing page. Or even easier, send any of us an email and say, send me the guide, and we'll get it to you. So what I want to wrap up with then is we'll go to our last slide and tell you that, number one, thank you for being here for this meeting. We welcome any other comments you have. And we already have scheduled our fall user group meeting. It will last about the same length of time. We shoot for about an hour to 75 minutes. You'll get an invite, but if you want to know right now when it's scheduled for, November the 17th, week before Thanksgiving. So that's, I think, all we have, unless you all have anything else to share. We appreciate, number one, you being our customer and for being part of our user group meeting today.